All right, welcome everybody to Rise and Play podcast. I'm your guest host, Nishan Katkov. As always, my guest is Sophie Vo,
Hey.
the owner of Rise and Play, the founder of Rise and Play. We're here in our Berlin studio, Savage Game Studios. Sophie has prepared questions for me, and I'm quite nervous, to be honest. Totally unprepared. And I think we're going to talk about my experiences on certain aspects. So this could be interesting or not. But Sophie, what have you planned for today?
Yeah. Well, thanks for introducing the episode today where I will be
Yeah.
leading it. Yeah, welcome to our office here in Berlin. One of the meeting room, like regular meetings, as Miska is
Mm-hmm.
visiting from Helsinki. So today I wanted to cover the topic of how to be yourself as a leader, like really yourself. Because how did we pick the topic? As well ourselves in our own management conversation, where part of this evolution of Savage Games after the acquisition, maturing, growing, scaling the company, it is also a transformation of a role. And always in those moments, it's the uncomfortable moment where I know what I've been doing before, I know who I am, or I think I knew who I am, and then I need to be someone else, like someone else expected from the role or what the company needs. And can I be that person? Is it still me? And I have found this question often in career where you take the responsibility, you take the role, and then you want to be yourself, and you see the limit of being yourself, which is not serving always the role, and we will get into that. And when you get to this, I would say, ceiling, and you get some help, sometimes coaching or therapy, it goes through a phase of transformation where it's a question like, is it the person I want to be? And redefining your identity. So without talking too much cryptically about it, let's
Yeah.
go in concrete example because I know you like concrete fish. And I always like to start with origin stories and origin, the beginning of things. So what I find always interesting when you want to understand yourself is understanding a bit where you come from and why. And I reflect often personally as well on my early years of career, where I give an example here where it was very tough. I had to present authority by my behavior because neither by my experience or by my look. I'm a small person. I don't even know if by my ethnicity. I felt like I needed to prove something. So I was overcompensating in the way I would behave. And I had to create kind of this persona in my early years of career of high performer, being a bit authoritative, firm, like tough. With its limits later in the career. But I do recognize now, reflecting back, that I was really trying hard to build this identity because it was not built externally. Especially my first years at Gameloft as an executive producer, I was managing teams remotely, so I had to act as the manager, the high role from the headquarters. And that was not really me, but it was not conscious at the time, and that was the right thing to do for me to establish credibility and respect in, of course, a structure of hierarchy. So I'm curious how you started your career, your early years. What was your identity as your first roles of manager, like, leading a project, or because I do know you have your track record, product roles. I don't know if it was even producer, but even before you build your own studio or startup.
Okay, so I wrote a couple of things. So it's like a building your leadership persona. Is that the case?
Yeah, it's that kind of a identity thing. It's like I said, now we're talking about it in a conscious way.
Yeah.
But when you're young, you just do things and you don't think about it. It's kind of an autopilot mode. And now that you think back of, I don't know, younger Mishka and who you were, are you still the same person with who you were? Or and if so, how was it? Or if not, then who was that person?
Yeah, that's a really interesting and a good question. So I hate it. Because I always like my leadership experience. I hate the part of like every time I start talking about like my first leadership experience comes from military. That's why I always have to reference that point because that's the first time when I was 19, I got the experience of being first of all coached to be a leader. First a squad leader, then a platoon commander. Platoon is 30 men with armored vehicles and whatnot. So it's 30 people is like a little studio. So in that sense, it gives a first experience, and then a lot of mistakes were made during that period. But what I'm trying to say is like that was my first experience, and what I learned from there is like, yes, there was this sort of a thing where you can put in authority, and in army it's even easier because your rank shows that you're higher than somebody who's below you, and the rule is that they have to obey to your commands. Like, of course, you have to give context, you have to be good. But there's a great difference between good leaders and bad leaders, and there what I learned was, number one, I can't keep up an appearance. Like I can't do that role. Like I tried to be like the military guy, like the clean cut, but I'm not. I'm a chatty cat. I like to joke around, and so that already started kind of like bleeding out of it. So I understood that I can't have this imposter of somebody else. I have to be me. And then I also learned to look up to a lot of leaders. And the leaders that I first looked up to was for like those squared ones, you know what I mean, who were like the lieutenants and the captains that were very like, you know, like, oh, that's a perfect military guy, exactly like you could imagine. And then I would kind of like start switching my like, no, actually you're more like this captain over there, that who are more personable, who have a persona, but they still can command because they you know, give great context. They're very approachable, and they show a great example. And so I started mimicking my way towards something that I can actually upkeep. And that was like on a high level, my biggest learning is like, I can't keep up a persona. I can be a different person in different stages, as you have noticed. I'm always the same. And that comes with the good and bad. Like what you see is what you get. so I'm always the same, no matter who I'm talking to. And that has become a problem. And it has become a problem over the time. So that worked really well when transitioning from my beginning of a product role to kind of like how to influence inside of a team as a product manager with nobody who reports to you, but you're influencing people who are a bit lower. Again, that ability to be personable, that work ethic that you can show, that those were kind of like my first qualities, not even leadership, but as a team member. And then I started moving, you know, from product position to game leadership position to studio leadership position. And I think it was all up until the role at Rovio, where I was leading a studio with multiple teams, where the limitations of being yourself truly hit me. And before that, when you're a team leader, being yourself is great because like you're a part of a team. He's our team lead, but we're kind of like all together. We're one team, and you're spending so much time together that you're growing closer. So it's perfectly fine to be yourself. And even in a smaller studio, like you run in Voodoo, for example, you're still very close. You're very close knit. You can be yourself a lot. You are somewhere in between, you know, the management and the team. Being a personable is great. But once you start scaling it to multiple teams, and especially working with people who you haven't worked before, you can't really replicate that same personable yourself experience. And what will start happening is people will take snippets of you and formulate the rest of the picture. And you will be painted in a very weird way. And at that point, you have to start managing what is the picture that is being made of you, because you can't give the same amount of time. You can't give all the nuances to these people. And that sets the limitations of how, you know, whether you can be yourself and who is yourself as a leader of a larger group. And at that point, you have to start managing it. And at that point, you really have to get like a perspective on yourself, because people they will paint a picture of you that is not you. So that's kind of like the path that I've gone through.
Yeah, very interesting points. I would like to take a pause on to reflect. Especially, we were together at the same time at Rovio, and it's funny. Like, let's get into the real thing here, because I did have an image of you as well. Like at the time at Rovio, it's not the perception I have of you now today, because we're part of the same team. We're working like closely together, and maybe I can relate to the part like I probably painted a picture of you that was based on some snippets, and even like snippets that people talk about you, right? and probably you had also a similar thing about me. And one point of reflection is really we have a desire, of course, to be seen for who we are. I mean, it's human, right? And in the workplace, and it feels great when you work with a team. You're in the same ship together, trying to do something, like going through pain and hurdles. Yeah, the reality when you get more into management position and has a title, at the time at Rovio, you were head of product and so head of the battle studio, right? Yes. So head of something already that already separates from just I'm the product lead. So I'm, like kind of a part of a game team.
Yeah.
And people will start to draw a picture of you based on your title. And how much were you aware of those snippets of those, I don't know if unfair is the word, but not representative picture of where you were at the time, of how others could perceive you? How much were you aware of this discrepancy? And what were you doing about it? Did you even care about it at all? Like, of course, there's the people in the studio, and you still need to lead a studio, right? So if people have the wrong picture and make the wrong decision, I don't know how it impacts, but there was also like the rest of the company at Rovio, if you can remember those times. I'm really curious how it felt for you, because I was observing it from outside, and I did not know, of course, what was happening, but I can understand a bit more some nuances of it today, knowing you.
Yeah. No, I like me today is very different already from me in Rovio. Like that was a great learning experience. Let's put it that way. So you either win or you learn. What worked really well for me in Rovio was managing up. This is something that I learned at Zynga, where that was the first big organization I was in, and I came in a very Finnish perspective of like, let me just work and I'll get things done. And I didn't manage up properly, and there was a lot of changes happening on the higher level that affected my work and affected the stability of the product and so forth. So that I used that learning again coming into Rovio, where there was a lot of instability happening at the same time. I lost my manager, and I lost my manager's manager in like about a month after coming in. The stock price got over halved during my first month. So there was a craziest first month you can have. But again, having that experience of managing up was very good for me, and I was able to secure my positions really quickly. But I think the biggest issues that I had in my style of leadership was that I was very how would I put it, like independent. I was a very independent thinker. So I didn't involve others that much. I was just like, let me set strategies and so forth, and then we could just start banging against those. And that was like, this is something that I worked with an executive coach back then. And a lot of my issues came from is because I was two things. First of all, not inclusive with my work. And that really limits how much buy-in you can have and so forth. And secondly, having too many different conversations with too many people, where that set up a perception that I have hidden agendas and so forth. So like the biggest influences that I learned from there, and especially in my leadership style, is like being very inclusive in decision making. Like sometimes you even say like, I don't make enough decisions, because that might be true. But again, it's like you have to understand the continuum of like, I was making all the decisions to now I'm like, let me listen to everybody before we start formulating and then aligning everybody. And then the second thing is like, the communication has been the difficult one, is that because now I'm trying to communicate as I tried to be very open in communication and in the beginning of Savage, and that backfired in the sense that it creates too much stress to people. They can't handle information, and they can't handle the changes with things, and they get hung up on some words, or they build their own scenarios if things are not like really clearly defined. So overall, like the learnings, I'm not sure even if I'm answering correctly this, but the learnings and the kind of like from Rovio to Savage has been, first of all, being very much inclusive with decision making with the team member, not with everybody, with the team I'm working with. So in this case, management team. And the second one is being very deliberate, and something that I'm working being is very slow in the communication. Like for example, we've been working on product strategy, and I've been rolling it out so slowly that I'd be like, is this still happening? but it's actually the correct speed in my experience, because like it will never end. It's like a slow wave hitting against the walls, and then people kind of understanding and so forth. It could be a little bit faster, but anyways, like my problems were too fast in communication, too independent in making decisions, and too quickly because I was thinking independently and communicating independently. I might switch what I was talking about, and that gave the feeling to people that everything is up in the air, even though I was talking hypothetically or just mentioning some things, and people were like, "Oh, we're going to a new direction." It's like, no. So that is kind of like something that I'm still working on. Is as you put it, it's the layers of communication, the layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3 of communication. Those still cause problems.
Yeah. Let's get into that and break it down, because you mentioned also you had an executive coach, and by the way, the challenges you're talking about, they have continued, of course, when you build your own company, because in any position of management where you do have I would say a lot of information for having the whole full picture, context, and what is to share, what is not to share, and also, as you share it, it's not the same weight if you are a random colleague talking about stock price or whatever, as you with the title of director and talking about something, and then it becomes the truth, right? So I'm pretty sure also, like now having joined Savage for 7 months.
7 months.
Yeah. Hey, I passed probation. I can see that as well being a legacy of startup times where I remember also my time at Voodoo, building the studio from scratch, wanting to be very transparent myself. Like it makes it easier to be you, right? It's like you want to do your job, you want to also focus on the game development, and you don't have to like calculate. It's like very calculated communication, who you're talking to, and it's a lot of effort. So when you don't do it, when you share things, and then trouble happens, people get worried, and it extrapolates. So here, like for example, to the piece of communication, which I find quite interesting, like sharing, saying whatever comes through your mind, being yourself, not having any filter. How did you realize that this has to change? And it's really hard to change because it's part of you, it's your habits, it's the way you are. How do you change it? Did the executive coaching help in any way, or what were the tools to at least try to mitigate that?
I think for me, it just came through, as always, through mistakes. Especially like when I try to remember the executive coach, the first one that I had, like, I just didn't really vibe with him. It was assigned to me, and that's why the choosing of my next executive coach has been a very different type of process. It needs to be a person that has a certain type of experience and somebody who I truly respect. Because like it's a coach, so
trust,
I can trust, I can respect, and I can feel really that I can learn from this person rather than just that person asking me to some things or the theory. Anyways, so for me, it's just been through a lot of mistakes. Like we're just talking about today. This is can I say this? Like an example of a poor communication. Yeah, well, I'll just say this because this is like a classic broken telephone communication. So with our IT manager, we're going through some IT investments to this studio space, so Berlin studio space, and they, the prices were really high for certain routers that are coming in from the corporate side. And I said, like, hey, like, why are we spending like a car's worth of thing on a space that is most likely not gonna last? Like, you've been there, it's not sustainable. Like, it's the startup space that we had. Most likely we need to move to the next one, and the capacity of this is not used at the fullest and that point and so forth. So kind of having like a very, what I thought was contextual conversation. And then we went for a lunch with him and another guy we have who's also from Berlin, but he was in Helsinki, and we were talking about, and he's moving from Berlin to Helsinki. So he was kind of like, how nice Helsinki is versus Berlin, like that kind of a conversation, like a normal like banter during the, what he likes about this, what does he like about Berlin. Of course, he's moving out of Berlin, so he's probably convincing himself as well, like why Helsinki is such a cool place. Anyhow, just normal lunch banter. That same day, the IT manager has a call with the corporate, with the IT departments, and they're discussing. And He says, "Yeah, we're closing down the Berlin office."
Wow.
I was like, "What?" And everybody's like, "What? What's going on?" And it's like, and so this is a classic example of being yourself and just having a good banter, and somebody is like next to you and just understanding it to like in an absolute wrong way and in the most fatalist way, and just and didn't even say like, "Hey, by the way, like, are we closing that studio then?" And then just like maybe he didn't even understand what the closing of a studio means. Maybe he meant that the space. I don't know what he meant, but it was like crazy, and that escalated. It kind of like just exploded. Like what is happening? Like this is a huge decision, and of course none of that was in discussion. We're just more talking about IT investments in the current space and whether we should be looking at, like, as you know, for the new space, etc. So this is a simple example of really how important it is to limit your communication and how to be very clear with the communication. And it is somewhat challenging to me. It can be easy for those who are not very communicative, or who have maybe large teams or are mostly involved with managers, or just really good at keeping secrets, which I'm moderately good.
Not to take.
No,
Give a secret.
yeah. No, I can keep anything under NDA.
Exactly.
So that those are the kind of like a learning experience, and those have happened so many times, and oftentimes like people say like, well, you said this, and I was like, what? What? And then they clearly remember that I said something even though I didn't say something, but over the time the understanding of something has transformed and they've kept that notion. And what puts even more challenge on it is that we have been working a lot remotely, and we have been working from two different studios. So that's sort of a misinterpretation between when you're having Zoom calls or video calls or whatnot. That caused a lot of problems because it's not like contextual like this. So all of this has led to really being much more deliberate with the communication, which is just very difficult for me, for my persona, and it's to me it's just kind of like finding a balance. So trying to find a balance and understanding that since 18, 19, so I was in the military, I understood that I can't keep up an appearance. I can't be a different person here and different person there. So it's more like as you said, finding the layers who you can be most yourself. And then secondly is just like also accepting that like finding that balance between like you're joking yourself, you know what I mean? Like I can't cut it fully, so it has to be at some extent. So I don't know how to put it. It's just like accepting that that's it, that you shouldn't expect me to be what what in your mind you shouldn't expect me to be Sophie. Like that's
Yeah,
it.
no, and
like
you
I'm not a
wouldn't-
stoic leader.
I'm not a stoic either, but for your perception of
yeah.
stoic. So also here, for a listener to give context on what you just shared is actually a critical piece because it's also where we can talk about actionable and solution.
Yeah.
When I joined the startup, I could see like the perfect example you gave. It's just one example. And imagine over 2 years of a startup,
Yeah.
it creates a bit of a backlog of rumors and gossip that become truth because they're fed by people peer-to-peers, but without you knowing. That's kind of a danger of it. And this is what I realized when I came. I was like, how is this even true? Truth exists where it's so far from reality because I'm in the management and I do see things. And I was really spending a lot of time to try to understand what is the chain basically of a story. And it's exactly what you shared is something that you share by being, I think for a hero personality of leaders who like to talk, like to very extrovert, like to chat, joke around, make it fun, like have buddies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we work when we work in a game team. We are all like, like I would say equal level, kind of battling together. It is different, of course, when you get more in management because suddenly you are the management and it has its own kind of status. but also responsibility, which you are not part of a group anymore directly, and this is a hard reality. But nevertheless, as you keep being yourself, share those things, they spread, they become truth, and they are passed on from people to each other, and it's really hard to undo after and change. So I will not talk here about how you correct that, but what I would advise is try to minimize the accumulation of it, because it's really hard to undo. And at some point, it's like, I think, a bit in relationship, when you start to look at it like from a narrow lens, negative, you start to feed an image of things. And at some point, it became so much your reality that nobody can convince you otherwise, and it's too late for the person. So we don't want to get there. And what we discussed like a month ago, when we were like reestablishing our baseline as a management team and our ways of working, and I have that realization as well, joining a management role, because before as well I was like, studio lead, game lead. Change for me, compartmentalize the communication. That's what we talked about, right? Because in our role, we have the right to want to be part of a team, be ourselves with a team, but I think here in the mindset is understanding who is our team. I thought the whole company was my team, or the game team is my team. It's not my team anymore. My team is the management team. And so here it's like switching the need of, can I be myself? Can I joke around and do all those mistakes and things that are not like, oh my God, Miska said that, and suddenly we are closing in office or whatever. We understand each other enough because we see more all the dimension of a person. So that was a kind of first finding. Identify who your team is, and you can be more yourself with your core team. The second was, especially in the management role, to identify your different audience. I love it when thinking. For me, I think in a structure where I need to make sense of ideas. And so I think of level 1, level 2, level 3. They are not in the hierarchical order, but it helps you closest to you, right? Imagine an onion, a core, and you have the layers. So your level 1 group is your team, your core team. Then you have level 2, who are sort of indirect contributors. You may have to work collaborators, you work with them, but you are not like really have no hierarchy. And you have a very far level 3, which like you have a 0 relationship, but you still happen to be there. Like superior by the title, because you have the highest position in the company. And so you may have different style of communication or level of information, or part of being yourself, level 1, level 2, level 3, with a level 1 or to level 3 audience. When we talked about it, I remember we had our own, FYI, we have our own coaching session with Miska regularly where we debrief those things. So here we share what we usually talk about in the podcast. How did that land on you when we talked about that at the time? And is it even realistic to expect of you, like kind of trying to structure it? If it's
it's quite easy, to be honest. Like that's a good formula to set. I think how would I put it? Like it brings a lot of perspectives and understanding towards your past going through this, because there's like sometimes I hear the funniest thing that people think that I do. It's just like Nad told me today. So Nad is my co-founder and a game director, and he was just laughing because it's like somebody asked about me, like just how he's like, I've been in this guy with 3 years in the same room. Like, where did you get this idea from? Like, this is insane. So I'm just not gonna even repeat. It's like but it's but just like it's like. This gives a perspective of understanding your previous managers and kind of understanding why sometimes leadership is one of the most loneliest roles. Because oftentimes, to be honest, it's easier just to sit on the side of the studio, like I do here as well. It's just like sit on the other side, like I better not, I don't want to even be there with everybody else. And then because and then some people come in here and just joke around who I know and so forth. So, but like it is truly that way, and that's why it also brings the perspective of like my previous companies, the CEOs, and like I started thinking about like, were people talking bad things about them? Yeah, in every single company. I mean, every single company.
Yes.
In the most successful ones, in the least successful ones, they always had something to say. And so when you're experiencing the same thing, where people kind of create images of you or try to paint you in a wrong way, you're like, you know what? even the best of them get this. So I'm complimented. Thank you. This is at least what I can expect it. So I don't have this sort of a thing where I'm, of course, if somebody has like a totally wrong thing that kind of bothers them, whatever, then that is worth correcting in conversation. But most of the times where people have different perception of me, of like, the funniest thing one was that they believe that I believe in aliens. I was like, what? We laughed about that.
Oh, what's discovery?
Because it was like one of the banter conversation
Yeah,
on the like, because there's like news with aliens and this and that, and I was just listening to Joe Rogan, and we just like having, and like I don't think about aliens at all in my. It was like one lunch conversation where I just had fun, but that one thing I realized that the people have like maybe one conversation. Some people have one conversation with me a month,
ever,
or 3 months, or in a half a year. And if that's the only conversation that they had with me, then I must be always talking about aliens. Not just doing that fun lunch. I was just like throwing banter. So just kind of like understanding that, and then like, should I control that? It's like, in the end, like, okay, so I believe in aliens. That's fine to me. Like, honestly, like, like, I really don't care to be like, I'll be honest, like, I really do not care. It's like, it's a funny one, but this type of a thing. So I think it's really important in a leadership role, also understanding that you cannot control everything. And yes, it's important not to get like bad rumors to fester and things like that, but you have to accept that some will, and people will have different perceptions and so forth. But you just focus on your work. Your work is not your public image management inside your own company. Your work is to push the vision and the whole company towards its goal set by either your investors or your leadership team, or usually the combination of all of that. And that is, getting results is your goal, and just accept it. Like you're not a friend of everybody anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
You will also not be the sort of a celebrated hero of your company. That is something that like many people who start their company, the CEOs, do not understand. Like, they will not, like, your team will not be like, our CEO is the best.
Yeah.
Like, they will always like have something bad. Like, the game director might be the best, the HR is the best, the office admin is the best, but the CEO is dumb. Like, no, that's the dumbest person. And it doesn't matter. It's like, and that's, again, in all the companies that I've been with the most, revered CEOs from the outside. From the inside, people are like, yeah, like, this guy doesn't get it, or he's like this, or he's like that. Not all of them, but there's always these voices. So just accepting that, like, that's the fact. And then just laughing about it.
And here there are a few points where it's true, like by being the CEO, you are exposed, of course, as a public image where people will judge you for the image you project.
Yeah.
And it makes me reflect actually here that, especially in the role, and here the four of us in the management team, we are not here for popularity contest. That's something often we remind each other about. Like, it's not like we are here to be disliked, but we're not here to be like, that's not how we are measured, right? And I think it's, for me, it was one hard to accept, because you are like when you are the game lead. I mean, you building with a team. You're doing like yes, it's a hard role, but it's a cool role.
Yeah, it's a cool.
And then you have like the villain figure, because I've been that person bitching on the CEO, like you say, because you have the same villain you can fight against.
Yes.
But when you are suddenly part of the management team, I realized finding myself as well part of that villain group, but is look evil by history, and like
it's the easiest thing to blame.
Yes, and so accepting that, and it comes back to as well, like, can you be yourself as the leader? It's like when you really know where your values are, your integrity, your morality, and it doesn't have to be validated internally in a company, and you seem not to care anyway about that. This is really important, because that's not what you are paid for, to be validated by who you are, and some decisions you will make when it comes to setting a clear direction, which will exclude, again, people who thought it was... Because when it's a direction that is vague, everybody thinks, oh, this is the best company for me, because everything fits. But when you converge, you commit, it means you start to exclude, and it starts to or displease people, and that's part of the job. And it's the same when you have to structure a team, organize, reorganize, select who is staying in which team and some who may not stay. So that's something really important to accept when you accept a management position. And it's back to can you be yourself? It's like you do your job, right? And the other aspect of it, as you say, like not that alien joke, where you can be yourself in the situation. I think here, it's again like I don't know how in practice that works, but it's what is the consequence of a judgment the person can have about you. So if somebody thinks you as a CEO is dumb, it has really not really harm like in day-to-day business, because they have their own director, they know their goals and so on. If they believe, for example, based on the few anecdotal evidence, that let's say the CEO is sexist or the CEO is racist. It's just an example. This creates suddenly a reality for people to talk about it and create a very insecure culture where you have everybody of color in the company because it's not a racist company. And then somebody would say, you know, by the way, we are here several people of different culture, but it's racist. This is where it creates this. This is where I see this very harmful. And when you hear about those things, like suddenly, where is this coming from? And it's really hard to change. So I find the tricky part here to even understand the impact of what you share and how it could be twisted to really some really dark realities. Like I'm giving an example here, but
again, it's like I don't know, like with it's just like you have to be just truthful to yourself, and it's just like I don't let, like, of course other people do how would I put it, like put valuation and put your self-worth. Yes, there are people who impact that, but it's not everybody. You know what I mean? It's not everybody in the company whose opinion I care. It's actually a very small percentage. And the second thing that was the best advice that I got from military was from the captain that I really admired in the officer school. He said, if 80% of people like you and 20% think you're a piece of shit, you're doing great. And that is really important to understand. Is like, you can't please everybody, and you shouldn't. Like 20, I'm still keeping that 20%. If it's over that, something miracle is happening. He gave like a very concrete example. You buying this brand of beer to everybody, and then the 20% will say like, this motherfucker, like this is the worst beer you can drink, and this guy is a piece of shit. So that's it. So I'm always like, okay, that must be a part of that 20% group. That's what I'm in. But also like going on like you said, like sexism or racism or that kind of stuff. Like, first of all, if you're not that case and you're going to start like some kind of a campaign to prove something that is not true, that it's not true, it's like, what's going on? Then you're making it true. I'd rather not even, like, maybe have a conversation, but usually those type of things should be handled by the leads of those people. To be like, they can raise it with their leads. It's like, is this the case in this company? Is this happening? And if you are truly if you're not a bad person and you have a good relationship with your leads, who have a good relationship with their leads, etc., they will say like, no, of course not. Just like with the with the craziest comments that you know the game director might have heard, and where he was like, just laughs at them like, what are you guys talking about? Like when did you even come up with this idea? So yeah, and then things get dissolved because it's not true.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like something we have, I wanted to finish on this point, it's something that we have, because we talked a lot about like how communication and being ourselves is sometimes not, of course, a representative of what we intend to say or be, because like it's selective, right? Like the selective moments start from your image. And how do you... I lost my train of thought. How do you correct that? And especially, wait, what was I? Sorry, it's like I lost my train of thought.
Well, let me continue from that. Like, I would summarize it using your compartmentalized communication circles. So the way you paint the way you have the most correct picture is you have good relationship with your L1s, with your own team.
Yes.
And you have an existing relationship with L2s. So let's say you're part of the management team let's say you're head of head of technology, and you have a good relationship with your peers in your management team. And then the L2 for you might be the directors of technology in different game teams, as well as in the central tech services. And you have a good relationship with those, then the level 3 would be individual programmers. You don't need to have the relationship with individual programmers, because if they think something or if they have some kind of a picture, they will talk to their
Yes.
directors. But you already have an existing good relationship with the directors that can correct and say like, well, no, and well, yes, and like, well, this is what he meant, and so forth. So having those relationship and with the L1s and the L2s, I think is enough.
Yeah, and the most thanks for summarizing that part, because that's where I was starting. The most the part you can have control on is really where is your core team. So it's not very important that the L3, for example, to you as a managing director, or me as the general manager, have a good perception of you, but your core team must know who you are, understand, and then those things will not be twisted. And the other thing is, like, when there's a rumor, because we started there, that was the thing. When we gathered together, there was really a legacy of those gossips that accumulated and became reality, really, really hard to undo. And from the moment, like you gave the example, we are not feeding it. It's like it disappeared from the moment it exists. Then this is how you kind of stop as well. This because when you chat with everybody, this kind of keep generated. And so this was one of the commitment as a leadership team. In like every leaders, we need to take the responsibility to eliminate gossips, and that means as well when something is not true, whoever is coming to us to entertain, a myth or a gossip. We show the data and like the reality. And I want to give an example back. If some of you are finding themselves in places where either you believe or you heard that someone thinks it's sexist or racist, it's really important to look again at data. And here, that's why, even if that was a rumor that was true, I don't recall like there was really in those words, but I feel very confident that's not the case by the actions, everything we've done here. And I have visibility on that. But sometimes people don't have visibility on the good actions because it's things in background. Like everybody enjoy the results of it, but they don't see the choice that led to the result. And so it's not like about justifying our work, but it's always making sure, is this reflecting a reality? So our duty, our job is, when we hear something, is that true or not? If it's not true, we don't have to correct it all the time in the true, because we are doing the right thing. But if it's something a little true, this is our job to correct the action, to make sure that we are not the company that we don't want to be. So
It's it's as you said, like good aligned relationship with your L1s and L2s, and L1s especially, and then the L2s like frequent, maybe monthly one-on-ones and that kind of stuff. Like make them bought in for the strategy, and have direct communication channel with them open if need be. I think that's an important. I also at one point I was maybe I was reading the Netflix book or something else where I was like I thought that I have to have like one-on-ones with everybody in the company. I think I've done it like twice. And the main learning from that is like people don't tell me the truth. And I was like, well, I understood that, but if I just keep an open communication channel, then I also took a step back and thought about myself in the same situation. Even now, if my manager or my manager's manager, usually, like let's say my manager's manager, which is already pretty high up inside PlayStation, would ask me something, that's not a quite easy question to answer. And would I bring something up to my manager's manager? Probably not, because then I'm going over my manager, and I don't want to do that unless it's very critical. Like that's a big move already. So oftentimes I would be like, yeah, everything is fine, or bring something like very small things up, but I wouldn't tell what really is the issue, because that is between me and my manager, and we might be working on it. And so it's my manager's role to bring that issue up to that person. That's how I kind of see it and reflected it. So I'm not mad at people not telling me, because I'm not doing either. And then the question is like, do you want to have just a direct communication channel with everybody? That could be pretty good. People can raise up certain things. But now that I have kind of Sophia and other people, I'm like, well, maybe not.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point to revisit because I'm not sure if it's realistic to expect that to having, especially as you scale, right? And is that even necessary? The value I see of it is more for the person to have that moment, 30-minute undivided attention from, the highest person in the company, right?
Yeah,
So
I'll probably keep doing it. I think it was Ilkka Paananen who was doing it at Superstar. I think he does once or twice a year through the whole company. I don't know if he still does it because the company has grown quite a lot. I'll give it a go. I'll report in a year how whether I think it's worth the time or not for the growing studio, but it's still under like a question mark for me. Is this a good time investment to have?
A few last thoughts, as we're still in work in progress in all of this thing.
Always. It never finished.
With what we discussed, because also for context, recently, a month ago, we sat down together as the management team and we drafted, coming from a book, some principles, 15 commitments of conscious leadership. So we will follow up anyway another episode of how we went through this whole journey, but committed to really put ourselves to the standards of leadership of a company we want to be. And part of this journey, how do you see today, how do you feel yourself today, part of this journey, in a complete, open, genuine answer, figuring it out?
How do I feel myself, as which journey? The old journey of games, or the journey of Savage?
The journey of Savage, and you as Miska, wanting to be
as
Miska.
As myself, I feel very fulfilled. Like this is the word that I've used a lot, because interviewing a lot of people, I see a lot of people wanting to, we interview a lot of people. We're always in interviews, and I see a lot of people searching for happiness. And I'm like, you're never gonna have a happiness from work. I'll be honest, happiness comes from you inside. But what you can have in a job is fulfillment. And that's what we're here talking about. Is this a job that will give you the fulfillment that you're finding? So on my own perspective, it's again, some of your stuff is the why. First understanding your why, that might take years. It honestly may take you years to understand what is your true why. And then making sure that your job fulfills that why. And once those things happen together, you're going to be in that job as long as it serves your why. And I feel very fulfilled in my role. My why has always been about learning and sharing learnings. And so I am learning and I am sharing learnings like this. And as I told others, every week I learn something new. I haven't updated on LinkedIn for a while. I'll start doing probably video updates because it's just easier than writing. But every week I learn something new. And I'm very, I wouldn't say excited. I'm thankful of learning new things, and it's a perfect journey. So in that sense, all these things that happen, whether they're positive or negative, they're all learnings. These funny things where miscommunication leads to these weird rumors. I'm interesting. That's an interesting learning.
That's a learning.
But I'm not treating it oh my God, I need to manage my external perception of me. And I feel very fulfilled, and I feel excitement. Excited is such an American word. I don't want to use the word excited. I'm just interested. I'm interested of the next stage. I'm interested of the next week. I'm interested in the next month. I'm interested in the next 6 months, next year. They're all interesting to me. So I'm zooming out and looking at from the far, listening a lot more than I was before, taking notes, learning, writing. So yeah.
That's really great to hear. I didn't have the opportunity to hear it in those words, so I appreciate it. And everybody can witness it as well. And one thing I have to say, in being yourself, you do have great quality of being Miska. So I wanted to say it. And just the challenges, being in the right role of being yourself, with the audience. It's just more calibration than are you the wrong person? It's more, it's being the right self in the right setup.
And it's also important to understand, to see leaders that are more like you in terms there are different leaders, the very stoic ones, the other, we post about those different ones. And once you see a leader who you respect and who has the same qualities. Like for me, it's like a very chatty, very extrovert leader, with an analytical mindset and so forth. Like I was like, oh, that's like who I want to be, and I love being with those type of leaders, learning from them and so forth. So kind of like understanding you can't be something you're not. Like if you try to mimic yourself as some people do, like Elon Musk and like Steve Jobs, like what are you guys doing? Like you've never met those people. You don't like pick somebody who you actually see, who's close to you, who you can learn from. That's the most powerful thing. So you have that north light, and then understand that you can't please everybody, and that you always have to find fulfillment in your job, and that will be found when you understand your why. Like, why is it that you're doing? Is it money? Is it status? Is it something else? And then work against that.
Yeah, and especially as on the final word, when I think of the leaders you want to be, I would definitely say, yeah, you don't want to be someone else. And I think it was where I read from Adam Grant. You're not competing with others. You're competing with yourself. You just want to be, an evolved version of yourself than yesterday. So that's kind of a journey.
Yeah, it is. It is. It was funny when we were talking about a certain thing, like back in the days, and that's where I used the why. I think it was last week when I said, I don't want to do this. Like, this is not me. Like, this is only good for my ego, and everything else is not it. And that was like, it was a good self-realization for me as well, is like knowing also when to say no to different opportunities. By just understanding, like, this is ego talk. This is not you. This is not every day. Like, once you get there, you'll be actually miserable.
Yes. And that's a great self-awareness to have, like, as a leader. So
yeah. So now off to aliens, and
check Miska's articles on aliens.
Yeah.
Because he has
If you don't believe, you're missing out.
Oh my God.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
As always, like, share. Those are nice things for Sophie and her podcast, Rise and Play. If you haven't subscribed, please do now. If you haven't left a review, if you're on the Spotify, or if you're on Apple Podcast, there's the 5-star thing. Just give Sophie all 5 stars, and she'll be very happy for it. So thanks for listening,
Thank you.
and off to the next one.
Bye.